Hi everybody, this is I'm Randy Bach, Dr. Randy Bach, and today's November 21, 2022. Try to say that 5 times fast. In Latin it's the 9th month, but of course the 11th because they stuck in July and August, and boy could we use those now. Anyway, so I'm here with the Newton Taxpayers Association, and I'm pleased and honored to have as my guest a man I admire so greatly. Bill Heck is a businessman from the hotel industry and others, and he's an all-around even-keeled, even-headed guy who has a real penchant for looking trenchantly and right to the soul of the matter. And we're going to try to find the soul of this matter, if there is one, the proposed budget override for Newton. And without further ado, Bill.
Randy, good evening, and good evening to anybody that is watching tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. This is not my favorite topic to talk about. It's called a tax override. And it's part of living in Newton. In this case, the city administration, the mayor, is asking the taxpayers to consider paying more taxes, and they have in mind that the money would be spent on certain things. And we want to have a very good conversation about this. The election is scheduled to be next March, so we're clearly about 3 months, 4 months away from it. And there's much to talk about because the need for, or the proposed need for a tax increase supposes a lot of things, and we need, as taxpayers and citizens concerned about the financial viability of the city and the way the city is managed, we need to peel back those layers of the onion and look and see why this is something that the mayor and the administration are suggesting that we consider. And we're very open-minded about this. We want to look at all things. And last week there was an announcement that there is an official organization promoting the override. It is called Vote Yes for Newton. Its website states that it's a grassroots organization, and it's co-chaired by Christine Dutt and Carrie Prasad. Now we invited them, we invited Christine Duff and Carrie Prasad to join us this evening to discuss the override, and they have not responded to our invitation. And we hope that this is something that will change in the next few weeks because we fully intend to have a lot of discussion about the override and to look beneath the surface and to understand it and try to explain this to the taxpayers of the city of Newton.
So, Bill, thank you for that. I got to say, I admire the depth that you have looked into this, and I would like to put a lot of your slides up. During our show, we're going to try and intersperse them, and we're going to put them up on our Facebook page as well, which is the Newton Taxpayers Association. I think we have 2 different pages, so either one / both we're going to do. So I admire and appreciate the depth with which you looked into the situation, but kind of from a blanket view, I feel I'm just going to put a few things out there, and you can touch on the ones you like. But I've noticed that housing prices have gone up and up and up. I believe they're at a peak. Zillow's prediction is that we're at a peak now, and across Massachusetts, housing sales numbers have gone down, and the prices are at their maximal. So the city of Revere, excuse me, the city of Newton takes about 1% per, of the value of your house per year in taxes, and they pretty much have the maximal amount they could possibly have, and they had it for the last few years, and that wasn't enough. I do notice also that we've kind of borrowed into our own pockets. We have, a huge federal debt and so forth. A lot of this federal money, for which we're going to be paying through inflation and future tax and so forth, went to cities as part of a relief package. So I think they got $20 million in 2020 as a discretionary fund, and yet here we are, $15 million short. I don't know if you want to speak to any of those things. The course of the housing prices, where they're going to be, whether they've, appropriately kind of kept their belts tight as we have. I mean, it's been tough these last few years. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people, now we have inflation, and housing prices are expensive and so forth. And we're supposed to dip into our belt, our own wallets, when it sounds as if they were not necessarily paying as much attention on their own.
Well, your observations are largely correct, Randy. And from discussions I've had with people in Newton, they kind of look at me and say, for whom are the administration running the city? In other words, are they running it for the taxpayers, or are they running it for other interests that are there? And those are just some of the questions that need to be reviewed in the coming months. So I've taken a moment to review all the things that the mayor has said, and I boiled it down to what the mayor wants, and I think we should present that.
Fair
here.
enough.
What the mayor wants is an additional $9,175,000 in real estate and personal property taxes every year for primarily the purpose of funding schools. And inasmuch as, in a much smaller measure, to fund other activities in the city, such as streets and parks and the like. And an additional $5,800,000 in 2023 to pay the interest on loans, that's bonds, to build 2 new schools, to replace current schools, Countryside and Franklin. In total, in 2023, it would be $14,975,000. Let's call it $15 million. We could call it $15 million because the PR for the override has cost at least $25,000 so far. And based upon what I'm seeing, there seems to be a lot of people on the administrative side of this spending a lot of time
It reminds me when
promoting this.
when they were trying to do Newton North, and just before they even dug, like all the consultants and so forth that got a piece of the examination for the plot of
yeah, well, that's much the way it works. And what we have to realize is that this isn't a one-time charge. This is forever. This is forever.
because it notches your rate up.
Oh yes, some important facts here. The override results in a permanent increase in the levy limit, that's the tax rate, of a community. These funds can be used for both operating and capital expenses, so override funds could be used for anything the city decides to spend it on. But Mayor Fuller has emphasized that this money will go primarily to schools. Secondly, each and every year, the City of Newton determines fair market value for properties for the purpose of calculating property taxes as of the prior January 1st. Only 4 times in the past 30 years has Newton decreased the assessed value of properties. In January of 23, of 2023, Newton will increase the assessed value of all residential property. 3, this means that an override will be levied on the new, higher assessed value of residential property.
Right.
This means that the tax bill you paid in November 1 this year will go up 2 different ways: the higher assessed value times the override increase, and that will be permanently.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt for a second because I just can't really quite grasp my head around the fact that housing prices have gone up and up and up. I think we've all noticed that. And so even at a fixed rate, the city would have gotten much more than ever before. I think houses are about 40% higher now than they were in 2015. That means the city, as a gross amount, even if they kept the rate flat, would get 40% more revenue or income or taxes, our money, to do their things, and a lot of them are excellent and useful and so forth. But they have not kept within their budget. I think in the last 3 years, the city budget has gone from like $415 million to $480 million.
Yeah.
That's at a time when, frankly, for a good part of that, the schools were closed effectively. And yet the budget has ballooned even faster than at the time inflation rate. So there's an interesting, I can't think of the name of this phenomenon, but whenever the government gets shut down, it's always the thing that you wanted the most that gets shut down first.
Yes, sure.
And so in this particular case, it's very attractive, I think, and our audience, Newton has a wide variety of people, but I think pretty much everybody I know in Newton, cares about the kids, they care about the schools, and it's going to be kind of a heart wrencher to hear, well, oh my God, these override elements is going to go to the schools for your kids and so forth. But I think it's a little bit of a bait and switch, because when the $20 million extra, like from COVID funding, came in, it did not go to the kids first. It went to there were bonuses given to city employees. We didn't get a bonus. I mean, the state of Massachusetts, oddly enough, sent some bonuses, as it were. The tax money that you put in, they had a surplus, and we got some money back. That doesn't happen in Newton. I'm okay with that. But in point of fact, I think they should have seen the handwriting on the wall, because Zillow predicts that housing prices are going to be going down. There's been a softening of demand in Massachusetts, and so when the housing prices go down, where are we left, Bill? Like 2-3 years. Let's say housing prices go down, 10 or 15%. What happens then to the budget and so forth? Where do you see all this kind of headed?
Well, we'll find out.
That's a good answer.
And I think that that there will be tougher times, and like managing any organization, you have to look to the future and plan all of your costs to be in reality to what revenues will be and what the market will pay. Yeah. So I think there's some important facts that need to be considered as we have this discussion. And as you say, Newton has more money coming from homeowners than it has ever had, because assessed values are the highest they've ever been, and because Newton has passed 2 overrides in previous years, 2002 and 2013. And that money has permanently increased taxes. Newton has received $20 million in COVID funds from the state and federal government since July 1, sent to the mayor for the mayor's discretion. I want to emphasize that. Spent at the mayor's discretion. It has already spent most of these funds, but is reserving the rest. So why an override? Why an override? Newton cannot live within its means. Why? Why is that?
Because they want to buy Webster Woods, I think.
It has the most money it has ever had, but now asks homeowners to pay even more. Why is that? It has the fewest students it has had in many years in its schools, but it is asking for larger schools. Why is that?
And the same number of teachers, I presume? I mean, we're not hearing any reductions in fact, faculty.
I have heard nothing in that regard, and I look forward to having the...
What were the I think the enrollment went down 12% or something like that?
Yeah, at one of our future shows, I would love to have the interim superintendent come and have an active discussion about this. Because sadly, Newton's school population has decreased at a steady, significant rate for the past 7 years.
Yeah, and it's not declining birth rate in that kind of quick drop. It's not the change in Newton's household demographics. It's people taking their kids out from Newton schools to put them in Catholic schools, other religious schools, private schools of whatever type, or homeschooling, I guess. But it's like, so they're paying those taxes for the schools ostensibly, and they have decided, a fair number of them, not everyone can afford to make this decision, but a fair number of them have decided, even though I pay, high city taxes for this beautiful city and all that kind of stuff, and a good half of that is devoted to the schools. So theoretically, every year you're paying towards tuition for your putative children, and yet they're taking their kids and putting them elsewhere on top with an additional fee of X number of dollars, $15,000 to $50,000 depending. And so people are making that decision. I think that's, this is not a taxpayer item per se, but that's in a sense an indictment of the way the schools have been handled or were handled in this most recent phase at a time in which the budget did not reflect that at all. We're not getting any kind of peacetime dividend for having fewer kids in the school.
You're right. Classrooms are going out of use, and this is due to fewer children living in the city and parents moving children out of Newton schools into various forms of private schools, or as you say, homeschooling. All of which are options that parents are exercising. And the big question is, can Newton find a way to live within its means now that it is educating the fewest students it has had in years? The fewest students. It has the fewest students it has had. So as we look at the override and we break it down into numbers, I have a table here that I think they're going to try to put onto the screen. And this table,
I was going to put it on your camera. That's all right, we'll get to it later.
This table basically breaks down the override elements. And of the $14,975,000, $11 million is in some way related to the schools. That's 74% of the total override is going to the schools, and understanding that the schools are declining in pupils.
Right, they're not going to decline the money, but they're declining in pupils.
And it does defy logic in many ways. And all other Newton needs are receiving 26% of the override. So you have clearly an override that is not about the city. It's really quite about the schools. And I think we need to establish that if we're going to have some form of logical discussion about the elements.
I just want to exercise some caution, because going to my bait and switch point, a lot of times, I mean, I grew up in New York City, and there were teacher strikes and this and all kinds of budgetary things going on through my upbringing. But when the budgets got tough, and this happened throughout, the first things that get cut are the things that parents want the most. So it's kind of like with companies, first one, last one in, first one fired. But it's somewhat like that. Whenever there's a budgetary squeeze, it's never going to be, teacher salaries, or number of teachers, or general physical plant. It's going to be the things that parents will get upset about. Oh my God, they're getting rid of art and music. They're getting rid of sports programs, all that kind of stuff. And then you have to kind of dive in. So, this is, I just wonder whether, this was put this way because their money is fungible. They get a city budget, and not every dollar's, has a writing on it where it's supposed to go. So they get money in, they can put the money out wherever they want. So the shortfalls they're showing, I think, are towards the school, which I think helps promote the idea that we have to save the schools, we have to save this for the kids. And when I go to the website for say yes or whatever it is, that people who want this override, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the schools, and we care so much about our kids. And I certainly get that. But I wonder, I want people to understand that when the money first came in, that a fair amount of this bonus money, of extra money from COVID, went to employee bonuses. It could have easily gone to the schools. We made a decision, to put $16 million to keep Boston College from having the full Webster Woods parcel that it basically negotiated for at the Jewish synagogue in Hammond Park there. And so we've spent $16 million. I assume that's going to be amortized or whatever, but it's $16 million, which clearly we didn't have. And now we're asking for it now. So,
and that land will have carrying costs. It's not as though you just buy it and it sits there. There will be substantial cost to owning that property.
Not only that, there's an additional negative or a ghost cost, which is presumably, I'm not sure they can tax Boston College, but if there were some enterprise on that land, that might be taxable. So there's also the case of potential tax revenue being lost and development and whatnot. But so we have this extra, number of acres. I forget what it is, another 8 acres or 16 acres or whatever it is. But at a substantial cost, which actually equals, this amount, that supposed shortfall.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take you back to the 2013 override, Randy. There was $4.5 million to be earmarked for the public schools. And the rationale for it was to increase the number of teachers, professional development, technology, to meet the growing enrollment needs of the school. And that is exactly what did not happen. They have receded. Where is that money going?
Well,
and how is it being spent?
Yeah.
And why are we continuing to collect it?
Yeah, this is a cynical element, but Mark Stein once said of General Motors that it's a very successful pension program with a failing auto industry, subsidiary. Right. And a lot of a lot of the money was going to keep everybody's employment and pension, but the actual product was not necessarily first and foremost in their minds, and it wound up being to varying extents failing. I perhaps wake up a little too cynical, but I just don't see or hear anything about whether we should turn down salaries or turn down number of employees or anything that a normal management decision might encounter with an industry that is showing fewer interested parties, fewer buyers. The schools are not exactly a buy-sell thing, but people clearly are not buying into the schools. And so they're pulling out and they're buying schools elsewhere. So they're taking their money and making a decision, a harsh decision, because these schools are essentially free. And it's, so I think this winds up being kind of a global talk about, schools in general and why, Newton schools have essentially failed their students. But now we're having to pay this bill at an incredible higher rate when nothing really has happened in terms of growth that they don't need it for 20% more kids, and frankly the opposite. So I think we're suffering here. Anyway, we have 5 minutes left. So,
well, I would say, as you look at these issues, all of these issues warrant discussion, and I want to reemphasize that there is an organization that was announced last week that is representing the passage of the override, right, called Vote Yes for Newton. And we extended an invitation to them to be here with us, and we have not had a response from them. And I hope that changes, because I would like to hear why they believe these override elements should be advanced. And they must have their reasons, and I think the viewers deserve to hear both sides.
Right.
And I would also say that, and I would emphasize, in the people with whom I have had discussions, they have stated, the way they have responded is, I think the city doesn't know who their customers are.
Right.
And that warrants further pursuit as well.
Right. So I'm going to thank you for all this, and we're going to leave people a little bit hanging because I'm sure you want to hear more and see the numbers and go over it yourself. But frankly, this is a call to action for you. If you are out there in our viewership, then you are going to be paying this tax, and you're going to be paying it extra, and you're going to be paying it essentially at a rate increase, based on this jump. So you're not going to go down. And so we are at Newton Taxpayers Association. We're on Facebook, and please, leave your name, your email, and if you have expertise in how to get the word out, marketing, messaging, communication, so forth, we want to know about it, and we would love to hear from you, and we're going to put you to work. So, Bill, do you have any advice for our viewers?
I think you need to pay attention. I encourage you to pay attention. We will be putting information onto the Taxpayers website. And there are other avenues of getting information, and talk to your neighbors about this. That's probably the best thing you can do. Become aware of how overrides work. Become aware of past overrides. One thing that we haven't mentioned is there are two overrides that have passed. There was an override that failed in 2008. And believe it or not, the city managed to go along very, very well for 5 years before Seti Warren called for an override.
Right.
And I believe it could have continued on without that override. Right.
So when we look at their budget, so we're going to close up now. So we look at basically a $500 million budget, and this is $15 million. You could say, oh, it's not that much, not going to hurt that much. But on the other hand, they have a budget, and they know in advance going in that they can't, like the federal government, print money, and like the state government cannot either. And we can see, in the same time frame that the state of Massachusetts is giving back a dividend or refund of your money because they didn't use it all. Why is it that the state of Massachusetts was able, in the same time span, to basically have a surplus, and the city of Newton went the opposite way? When in fact the city of Newton's main customer, half their budget goes to the schools, and 12% of that has disappeared. So I know they have fixed costs. They can't change the size of the building to grow and shrink, whatever as necessary, but they do have faculty, and they do have ancillary staff and a lot of other programs. Anyway, so here we are. This is Bill Heck. I'm Dr. Randy Bach. Please, stop in on our Facebook page, Newton